Okay, now we're really getting into things. And I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the previous exercise, but I don't know about you, but I'm a note taker. So you may want to make sure you have a notepad in front of you with a pen or a pencil, or perhaps you want to type up some notes. This is where we really start to dig into the idea of exactly what a logo is. I'm going to talk about some different logo types. There's 3 different logo types that we'll talk about as well in this exercise. So this is where we really start to get into the nitty-gritty, and you might want to jot down some notes as we go. In the previous exercise, towards the beginning I believe it was, I said that we probably don't really need to define what a logo is. You know what a logo is, I know what a logo is, but again, I want to start to sink our teeth into this idea of what a logo is, what it represents, and the sort of the purpose that they serve. So here's what I did. I went to, and it's been a long time since I've been to this website, Merriam-Webster.com. What does Merriam-Webster have to say about logos? Well, they define logos as a symbol that is used to identify a company and that appears on its products. Well, that's kind of great and wonderful, and you and I kind of already knew that. So that's fine. How about Dictionary.com? What did Dictionary.com have to say? Well, Dictionary.com defined a logo as also being referred to as a logo type. Okay, that's great. A graphic representation or a symbol of a company name, trademark, abbreviation, and so on, often uniquely designed for ready recognition. Now, again, if you're jotting notes, I want you to write that down. Ready recognition. We're going to come back to this sort of this theme over and over and over again. Being recognized in the noisy, busy marketplace. Now, the best definition that I found, anyway, was over on the good old Wikipedia. So this is what Wikipedia had to say. According to Wikipedia, a logo is a graphic mark, an emblem, or a symbol commonly used by commercial enterprises, organizations, and even individuals to aid and promote, here it is again, instant public recognition. Again, if you're jotting notes here, instant public recognition. Wikipedia goes on to say here, logos are either purely graphic, so comprised of symbols or icons, or they're composed of the name of the organization, which is referred to as a logotype or a word mark. And we're going to dig into this more towards the end of this exercise. We'll dig into this more and more. But Wikipedia further says that at the level of mass communication, so the modern era, what you and I deal with every day, at the level of mass communication and in common usage, a company's logo is today often synonymous with its trademark or brand. Interesting. All right, so we're getting somewhere here in terms of exactly what a logo is and exactly let's call it the functionality of a logo. And of course, this ties directly into logo design. What do we have next here? Well, logo design is a component of branding. Now, what's branding? Well, Entrepreneur.com defines branding as the marketing practice of creating a name, a symbol, or design that identifies and differentiates a product from other products. Okay, that's a pretty good definition. Do you want that one more time? Again, I don't know if you're taking notes here or not. Entrepreneur.com defines branding as the marketing practice of creating a name, symbol, or design, and this is the important part, that identifies and differentiates a product from other products, or maybe said a little bit differently, from companies from other companies. Okay? So, branding is a set of tools that companies use to try and persuade us, the consumers, to associate positive emotions to the company and its products. 2 examples here for you. McDonald's I'm Loving It advertising campaign, the idea of trying to get positive emotions associated with the McDonald's brand. Here's another one that we all know, Nike's Just Do It. These advertising campaigns and strong branding messages tap into something much larger than just hamburgers or a pair of sneakers. So that's what branding and really advertising is all about. Okay, here's how I define branding. Kind of a much simpler way to define branding. I define branding as a unique set of colors, fonts, and imagery. So what do I mean by unique? Well, different from everybody else, at least in that industry or that market space, and it's a set of colors, it's a set of fonts, and by imagery, I either mean photography or I mean, graphically or, iconically, if that makes sense. So branding is a unique set of colors, fonts, and imagery that communicates a company's value to you and I, the consumers. Think about this. When you think of Coca-Cola, what do you think of? When you think of Porsche or Ferrari, what do you think of? If marketers and branders have done their job right, then you should be thinking positive things about these companies, but it doesn't always work. I'm sure that you, in your own mind, associate negative emotions with particular brands. I think we all do in different ways. Myself, personally, it's McDonald's. I have a negative association to the McDonald's brand and all their advertising. That's just me. I don't like to eat there. I won't get into the negative emotions about what I associate McDonald's to, but it's not positive. I'll say that. Okay, so let's move on. I hope this is making sense here for you. So, logo design is a component of branding. All right? Branding is a part of the world of graphic design. Okay, so I'm trying to break it down here for you. So we've got the world of graphic design. Branding is kind of a subset of graphic design. Logo design is a subset of branding. I hope that makes sense. Okay? And graphic design is a function of advertising and marketing, or I suppose what we could call visual communications. That ties into graphic design as well. So that's how the whole smorgasbord kind of breaks down there. Really solid, outstanding logo design is one of the most challenging areas of graphic design, I would say. In fact, it's even safe to say that very, very good logo design is one of the toughest areas of graphic design to master. Professional logo design is not easy. Now, I don't say this to dissuade you, but more perhaps to motivate you to become a better logo designer. Now, that said, there are different levels, if you will, of what I would call successful logo design, and we'll get into this shortly, but the best of the best logos really are an extension of the company's overall brand, the company's overall values, and so on. And like I say, we'll get into this more and more in just a little bit. A really successful professional logo is a symbol or a mark that sort of packages up or contains everything that the company stands for. And as consumers, we look for these uniquely identifying, I should say, marks when we're out shopping, when we're out looking for products. Okay? All right, so I hope you're enjoying all of this. I said that we would talk about the 3 different types of logos as well. Let's dig into it here. Logos come in, obviously, a few different varieties, and I've tried to categorize them into 3 different types. So let's check this out here. The first kind of logo that we have is what I'm going to refer to as a word mark. Now, these are the most common logos that you and I see. Simply said, a word mark is the company's or the product's name presented in a uniquely stylized way. For example, Barq's Root Beer or Eddie Bauer or Kool-Aid or probably the most famous of all, Coca-Cola. All right, so it's just the name of the product or the name of the company, and it's formatted in a unique way. What I mean by unique is not only unique in the mass marketplace, but formatted or stylized in a unique way within its own market. Okay? All right, so that's the first kind of logo, a word mark. The next kind of logo that we have is what's referred to as a logo type. This is the second most common kind of logo. A logo type is a logo that's comprised of a graphic of some kind, which is oftentimes referred to as a mark or an icon or a glyph, along with uniquely stylized text, either the company name or the product name, which you and I already know is referred to as a word mark. So a logo type is made up of a mark or an icon along with uniquely stylized text. Okay, here's some examples for you. AT&T, the North Face, or again, probably the most famous one of all, Nike. So the Nike logo, uniquely stylized text, along with, of course, the world famous Nike swoosh. All right. So we've got word marks, we've got logo type. Here's the third kind, what I'm going to refer to as a glyph. Okay, a glyph logo is a logo that's only comprised of some kind of a mark or a symbol. So, in other words, no text is a part of the logo. These arguably would be the oldest forms of symbols. And my hunch is because long ago literacy rates were much, much lower, obviously. So, how could you communicate, 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago to someone who can't read a message? You'd say something like, "Hey, see that symbol over there? This mark that we have here? This represents Caesar, or it means Christianity, or maybe it means pirates, right?" So interestingly, there are some universal glyph-only marks or symbols that everyone across all languages and international borders recognize. For example, perhaps the skull and crossbones, or the Union Jack, a heart, a red cross, a yin yang symbol. These are universal symbols that everybody understands. Now, in modern times, now that the vast majority of us can read, thankfully, it's important to note that very, very few companies can get away with using a glyph only logo exclusively without any text. There are some exceptions, of course. I'm thinking of the Nike swoosh or perhaps Apple, but that's really about it. Not everyone knows what this is, for example. And marketers can't rely on the public recognizing their company by glyph alone. Okay? However, I will say that sometimes glyph only logos are used by those in the know, those in the in club, if you will, for example. So, to summarize, some logos are so widely recognized that they can get away with just using a glyph or a symbol. We talked about Nike, we talked about Apple. Here's another one, the Rolling Stones perhaps, Red Cross. Others are just stylized lettering, something like this, the KISS logo, Canon, or of course, I already mentioned here Coca-Cola. Others get very creative. For example, Domino's Pizza or FedEx. These are much more stylized and interesting and clever logos than some of the others that we've seen already. Now, before we move on, I want to give you a quick example that ties together a lot of what we've been talking about. I'm going to leave you with this example before we move on here. Do you know the company Cisco? They're a networking and technology company. If you aren't in the server market, then their name and their logo likely are quite meaningless to you. Even if it's a pleasantly designed logo, if you're not in the market, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot. And this is a point we'll delve into in more detail in the next exercise, by the way. But for now, we can say that the logo is pleasantly designed and it makes use of both uniquely stylized text and a glyph, the glyph being the lines above the company name. Now, interestingly, the company is named after San Francisco, not far from where the company was originally founded. But much more interestingly, to me anyway, are these lines that we see above the logo. What do they look like to you? What does that look like to you? To me, they almost look like, like the server indicator lights or network status indicator blinky LED lights that you see on computers and servers and things. That's what I thought they were. Turns out they actually form the Golden Gate Bridge. Isn't that cool? If you didn't see it before, you see it now. Isn't that a clever design to incorporate into the logo? So this is an example of a logo that ties in stylized text, the company's history in the form of a glyph, and of course pleasant design, let's say. Okay? I'd say this is a very well designed logo, a very clever logo that means something both to the people who founded the company and also to the people that they serve. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I'll catch up with you in the next exercise.